All right, we're letting people in and we'll be starting the webinar shortly. Welcome, everybody. We had a good number of people register and we're just waiting for the top of the hour and maybe a minute after. So you have about a minute to collect yourself before you might want to get your notepad.
Very good.
Again, welcome everybody. We are waiting for more people to arrive as the top of the hour is upon us. And this is being recorded, as you noted when you entered. You're welcome to put in chat where you're from around the state, if you want to. This is very Massachusetts specific. Earlier this week, we did a webinar which was open to the rest of the country. This is more Massachusetts specific and about a different topic entirely. The other day, we were talking about pickleball. Yesterday, we were talking about councils on aging and what you can get out of your councils on aging. And today, the tax-aide program. All right, it's 12 o'clock. I'm going to get started and I'm sure we'll see a few more people arrive. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining up to learn more about getting ready for tax season. As I said, if you want to in chat, you can enter in where you're from around the state. And there, I've just made it possible for you to enter into chat. So we're here today with Maria Maggio, who is a retired high-tech professional. And this is her 6th season volunteering for the AARP Foundation Tax-Aide Program. In addition to being a volunteer tax preparer, she is also a district coordinator and an instructor with a focus on teaching people to prepare the Massachusetts tax return. So she does direct service, and she also is a leader in the AARP Foundation Tax-Aide Program here in Massachusetts. And the AARP Foundation works towards a future without senior poverty. And right now there's more than 37 million people over age 50 in the United States who are either already in poverty or just one life event away from slipping into it. And the AARP Foundation is the charitable affiliate of AARP. It provides resources to millions of older adults with low income, helping them secure jobs, get the benefits and refunds they've earned, and basically helping them stay connected to their communities. The foundation programs and services like this one, like the AARP Tax-Aide Program, are available to AARP members and non-members alike. I'm on the staff of the AARP Massachusetts office, and we are a hardy band of 10 people working on advocacy, outreach, and education with a focus on health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. We have 38 million members nationally and over 670,000 here in Massachusetts. And I know most of you are here because you got an email with upcoming events listed. I also encourage you to check out the AARP Virtual Community Center, which is national, where you'll find a lot of other programs that might be of interest to you. And you can find that at aarp.org/VCC. I'll put that in chat momentarily. So today's webinar is short and sweet, 30 minutes. We might go a little bit over that depending on the questions that come our way from you. And then if we don't get to everybody's questions within the 40 minutes that we'll probably be here, you can email us questions at ma@aarp.org. And I'll put that in chat again as well. Some of the questions, if they're too particular to your individual case, we will likely not take them up with Maria today. And you could potentially send them to the inbox that I just gave you. We'll be sending out a recording of today's webinar, as we do with all of our programs. And there's also going to be a very useful handout. If you haven't figured it out already, you can turn on the closed captions at the bottom of your screen if you need that and want that. And I think that's about it. You can put the questions in the Q&A section. If you happen to put them in chat, I'll probably grab them from there as well. So I think Maria done all the housekeeping. It's now in your hands to offer some very good information for people. Thank you for making time during what is a very busy time for you and your team. We know that you're getting ready for the beginning of tax season, and yet you made time for this, and we could not appreciate you more for that. So over to you, Maria. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this webinar to hear about the AARP Massachusetts Tax-Aide Program. I certainly hope that you find it helpful. Now, the AARP Foundation, as Kara already mentioned, is AARP's charitable affiliate serving both AARP members and its non-members. And the mission is to work to end senior poverty, especially by helping vulnerable people over 50 build economic opportunity. Now, the Tax-Aide Program is the largest program of the foundation. Now, while the focus is on people over 50 who have low to moderate income, there are no age or income limits with the program, and you don't even have to be an AARP member to use the free service. Now, the Massachusetts Tax-Aide Program has almost 200 sites with over 600 volunteers across the state. Last year, our volunteers prepared over 23,000 returns, both Massachusetts returns and federal returns. Nationwide, the program did over 850,000 returns. Now let's look at the volunteer training and certification requirements. We hold extensive training in the fall for new volunteers and update training for returning volunteers to cover any changes in the tax law for the current year. AARP Tax-Aide offers additional training, and the IRS requires us to take and pass their certification tests annually. We hold additional training for preparing Massachusetts tax returns. In addition to the training and certification required, a second certified volunteer called a quality reviewer double checks every return we do. So we have at least 2 pairs of eyes on all returns that we prepare. Now, what type of returns can we do? We use the terms in scope and out of scope to define what our volunteers are allowed to do. The IRS determines the scope, and we're not allowed to go beyond it. At the site, there'll be a poster which details what we can and can't do. But you can see that there's a pretty wide range of things we're allowed to do. So a typical low to moderate income taxpayer will be well within our scope. I do want to highlight a few key things that we're not allowed to do. Certainly ownership of any virtual currency, Bitcoin or the like, rental property, anything with depreciation, anything with complex capital gains, like if a person is trading in stock options. We do self-employment income, but a small business with either employees or losses or expenses more than $35,000 or other complicated factors, now that return is going to be out of scope for us. We would have to send you to a paid preparer. Now, this isn't a complete list, so consult with the site to confirm whether your return is in scope or not. So this isn't a complete list, but it does include some of the items that you'll need to bring. We do ask for a prior year return, as it's an excellent tool, especially for the quality reviewer, to compare to this year's return to see if anything is different. If there's a pension on last year's return, but not this year, it may indicate that we're missing a 1099-R form. We recommend you bring your checkbook or a voided check for direct deposit, as you'll get refunds a lot faster and there's less risk of a refund check getting lost in the mail. And those can be quite difficult to replace if that does happen. It's certainly up to you if you choose to do that, though. Anytime a taxpayer has gotten a letter from either the IRS or the Massachusetts Department of Revenue during the previous year, we'd ask you to bring that in because it can identify a potential issue from a previous year that we would certainly want the tax preparer of this year to be aware of. Now, you want to bring in all your 2022 tax income and expense documents, and we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. So tax documents usually are mailed out roughly this time of year, mid-January through the end of February. There's a few specialized ones that might come out into even March, but most taxpayers are going to get all of their documents by February. They're often marked important tax documents on the envelope, so you want to keep an eye out for them. These days, some companies don't mail out tax documents anymore, but ask that you log into your account with them to download them particularly. If you're comfortable with the computer doing that, there's some advantages because again, you don't have confidential tax documents getting potentially lost in the mail or even stolen. If you need a hard copy of them, you should certainly just ask the company you're working with to make sure that they know you need a hard copy of your documents. Now, income documents generally include things like wages. They come on a W-2 form. There's various 1099 forms, like a 1099 int or div for interest and dividends. Retirements come on a 1099-R form as well. Now, on the gambling winnings, you would get a W-2G form. So you're going to collect those income documents that you receive again in the current time frame, in the January, February time frame. Now, expense documents can come on forms. Often they're 1098 forms like mortgage, tuition, and student loan. But there are others that they don't come on an official form. They're just expenses or receipts for things that may be tax deductible. Now, taxes and unreimbursed medical, those are only needed if you're itemizing. If you're not sure if it's better to take the standard deduction or to itemize, just bring in all the items and we can help determine which is going to be better for you. And again, consult with the site to confirm the full list of what to bring. Now, how do you get help? The AARP has a site called the Site Locator. We have the link up here, and I think Cara will put it in the chat for you folks. You can enter your zip code, and it'll show the nearby sites along with what days and hours that they operate, and a phone number to call for an appointment. Now, be aware, appointments fill up fast. I know in my district, I have a number of sites that are already half or 3/4 filled up. So you want to make sure that you request an appointment quickly before the appointments all fill up. We can only do as many returns as we have volunteers at that site. Now, different sites offer a variety of service models. And so not all sites offer all service models. In the Site Locator, it will tell you for a particular site what service models that they do. Now, in person is what our traditional model has been. You'll come into the site, you'll fill out an intake sheet, which the IRS requires us to have you fill out, and you'll be interviewed by a client facilitator. This is a volunteer who will review your documents with you, make sure your return is in scope, and organize everything and get it ready to be prepared. Then you'll meet with the tax counselor who will prepare your tax return. And then finally, your return is checked by a quality reviewer who, after checking the return, will review it with you, answer any questions you might have. You'll sign the form authorizing us to electronically file for you, and then we'll give you a copy of the return for your records. Now, the scan model is similar, although you're going to make multiple trips to the site. So after the interview, a counselor will scan your documents and return them to you. You'll return to the site at a later time. We'll make an appointment for you to come back, and you'll review the completed return with the quality reviewer. Again, sign and get a copy for your records. A drop-off, similar, except instead of scanning the documents, we keep the documents while we're preparing. Now, there are strict rules that the IRS imposes on us for keeping things locked up while they're not actively being used to prepare. And we use an inventory sheet to track, to make sure that we keep track of all of your personal documents, to make sure that we keep them secure and keep track of them. The last option is what's called the assisted self-prep. And again, we have a link where you can go online and request help with the assisted self-prep. Now, this is where you prepare your own return, but with help from a certified and trained volunteer. Now, the help can range on one end of the spectrum to you pretty much do it yourself, but you have a couple of questions, to literally someone walks you through step by step each of the return, doing the return. The self-prep program is under the IRS free file program. So there are income limits in order to get access to the free software and the free electronic filing. The number this year is 73,000. Now, you can ask for help and receive help regardless of the income level, again, as long as the return is in scope, because that's what our volunteers are trained and certified to do. So they can answer questions, but you can only get access to the free software and the free filing if you're under that income limit. Now, our tax aid volunteers are specifically trained to look for credits that people might be eligible for. There are numerous ones, both at the federal level and at the state level, like education credits, earned income credit, credit for childcare in order to work, many, many others. Now, we don't have time to, in 30 minutes, to talk about every credit that people might potentially be qualified for, but we do want to highlight a unique and particularly valuable credit available to Massachusetts residents 65 years or older, called the Senior Circuit Breaker Credit. Now, what is the Senior Circuit Breaker Credit? It's a refundable credit for homeowners and renters in Massachusetts as long as they meet certain requirements. It can be up to $1,200 this year. Now, refundable means even if you don't have a tax liability, Massachusetts will refund you the amount, either send you a check or a direct deposit into your bank account, just as they would with a regular tax refund, even if you have no tax liability. In order to claim, you have to file a tax return and you have to fill out the Massachusetts Schedule CB form. That's CB for circuit breaker. Now, to fill out this form, we can help you at an AARP Tax-Aide site. You could certainly use the assisted self-prep, do it yourself, or you can go to a paid preparer. Now let's look a little bit more details about the Senior Circuit Breaker credit. Now, as of for 2022, the maximum amount you can receive is $1,200. This tends to go up $20 or $30 every year, so it doesn't stay static. It will increase every year. Now, either the taxpayer or if you're filing jointly, the spouse must be at least 65 years of age or older. Both do not have to be 65 or older. Now, one of the qualifications relates to how much real estate tax or rent you paid compared to your income. So for homeowners, real estate tax paid plus half of your water and sewer bills have to exceed 10% of your total income. In the case of a renter, if 25% of the rent paid exceeds 10% of the total income, you meet these requirements. Now, you won't be eligible if you are have subsidized rent or if you're paying your rent to a tax exempt entity. So certain veterans housings or public housing, you wouldn't be eligible in those cases. Now, Massachusetts doesn't tax a number of things. Like Massachusetts doesn't tax Social Security, doesn't tax certain types of pensions, public pensions, like a teacher's pension or a state pension, doesn't tax savings bonds, but those non-taxable items need to be included in the calculation for total income to determine if the taxpayer qualifies for the credit. So we'll include all of these items. You won't be taxed on it, but it does go into the factor into the qualification for this credit. Now, you see here are the income limits to qualify. So even if the taxpayer meets the other requirements, if your income is over these limits, then regardless, the taxpayer won't qualify. Now, if you're married filing separately, unfortunately, you will not qualify for this credit. There's also a limit on the assessed value of the home. So this year, the value is $912,000. So if a home is assessed at a value above that number, then the taxpayer is not going to qualify for this credit. Most of our taxpayers fall within these guidelines. So usually it's the previous set of requirements that determine whether people qualify for the credit or not. Now, these income limits do increase generally $2,000 or $3,000 per year, and the home value numbers, certainly the last few years, every year they go up about $20,000 or $30,000. So they don't stay static. And so as the cost of everything goes up, these limits go up as well. Now, what do you need to bring? If you're going to make an appointment with us and you want to have us do your tax return, including the circuit breaker, you're certainly going to bring all the tax documents that we previously discussed. Plus, you do need to bring your real estate tax, water and sewer bills. If you are a homeowner, you need to bring rent if you are a renter. Now, many cities and towns will provide you a report of taxes, water and sewer paid for the year. So you can ask at town hall or city hall, or if you have canceled checks or other receipts for the paid property taxes and the utility bills. It has to be what's paid in the year, not just what you're billed. So if you don't pay a bill that's due in December and you don't pay it till January, well, it would go on the qualification for the next year. So it's whatever bills you have paid during the calendar year. For rent, you want to include canceled checks. A lot of time people pay rent by having automatic withdrawal from your checking account. So certainly you could use bank statements, and then many commercial properties will provide you a year-end statement. So you can just use that summary statement as proof of what rent you've paid. You also want to bring in any amounts for other non-taxable income that you received during the year, because again, you're not taxed on it, but it does get included in the calculation to see if you qualify. Now, there are some special rules on the lot size that your house is on. If you have a multi-unit house, if maybe you have a 2 or 3 family house, or if the home is in a trust. So you certainly want to check with your site for more information on your particular situation. Now, if you qualify, but you didn't know about this credit or didn't have any help to fill out the Schedule CB, and you didn't take the credit in the previous year, the exciting news here is you can actually go back up to 3 years to file an amended return if you qualified for the credit, but you didn't take it. So when you make your appointment, ask if the site does amended returns. Not all sites do them, but most will, but certainly make sure the site is aware and is able to do an amended tax return. You do need to provide the initial return for that year, along with tax, water, sewer bills, or the record of the rent paid for the year. So again, you can go to the city hall or go back to your landlord to get information about, to get records from the previous year. So up to the filing deadline this year, it's actually April 15th this year, you could actually go back and we could do a tax year 2019, 20, or 21. So we can go back up to 3 years. I last year did, a taxpayer came in, wasn't aware of this. We filed it for this year for her. She made another appointment and we actually did 3 years of back returns for her. And, you know, she got checks totaling over $4,000 between the 4 years. So it really is something that's a valuable credit. And if you missed it, you at least have the opportunity to go back 3 years to claim it. All right, so one final thought that I wanted to leave you with, even if you don't have a requirement to file a tax return, it's a really good idea to do so to prevent someone else filing a fraudulent return with your name and social security number on it. There are some very valuable refundable credits. We talked about one with Massachusetts with the circuit breaker. And so you don't want someone else using your social security number to fraudulently get them. By electronically filing a tax return, you prevent someone else from doing so. Now, I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have.
That was very thorough, Maria. Thank you so much. So we have one question so far, maybe a couple others will come forward. So I'm going to ask, the question here is about if they don't have their tax return documents from last year, but they have the actual tax refund transcript from the IRS, will that be sufficient?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not even a hard and fast rule that, I mean, we ask you to bring in last year's return. It's to your benefit and to our benefit, but we will do your return even if you don't have access to it. But if you have a transcript, that's 90% of the information.
Great. And then another person asked about the fact that they earn income in both Connecticut and Massachusetts. So can they have their taxes done by your team here?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our volunteers in Massachusetts Tax-Aide are trained to do federal and Massachusetts state returns. We have what's called a state tax assistance program. So if someone comes in here, I would probably have to do assuming I'm a Massachusetts resident, but I have Connecticut income, I'd probably have to do a non-resident Connecticut return. I can make a request and a Connecticut counselor, someone who's certified in Connecticut tax returns, can assist me to do this. Now, not all sites participate in the state tax assistance program, but many sites will. And again, it's one of those questions you want to ask your site, tell them about your situation. But certainly if you came to my site, that's how we would handle it, is we would prepare the federal return and the Massachusetts return, and then we would get a certified counselor in Connecticut to review and assist us with preparing your Connecticut return.
Okay, it's probably likely that most sites do that, not just your district, right?
Yeah, I would say 50-50. So
Okay, but it is possible. So,
it is possible. Not all states. So I happen to know Connecticut participates because I think we've asked for help from Connecticut before. Not all states. I know California doesn't participate. So about 35 of the 50 states participate in the program. So we can't do it for any state, but I am aware of Connecticut participates.
got it. Maybe Massachusetts and Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, I am a assistant counselor. I do a lot of tax returns for people filing in Florida where the Florida counselor isn't aware of how to do Massachusetts returns, and I assist them doing
That's
the
great.
Massachusetts return.
That's great. All right, I got 3 more questions. Is there a rule of thumb to figure whether it's beneficial to add up all unreimbursed medical and other deductions to save time in gathering all this? Is there a rule of thumb or any advice you have around that?
Yeah, I mean, I've done rule of thumb. It ends up being not as simple as I would like. I mean, I tend to use if you're single, use the number about if your total deductions are over about 12,000, if you're head of household, maybe 15,000, if you're married filing jointly, 25,000. Those aren't the exact numbers, but if you're in that ballpark, it's worth it to add everything up to see if it is worth doing. But that includes property taxes, state income tax, mortgage income, as well as medical expense. Now, not to get too much in the weeds, one of the things about the medical expense is if you do itemize, you're only allowed to itemize what exceeds 7.5% of your adjusted gross income. So if someone makes $100,000, the first $7,500 of your, and I just use 100,000 for the easy math, the first 7,500 of your medical bills, unreimbursed medical bills, will not be allowed to be deducted. So usually people have to have pretty high medical to qualify for that deduction.
Okay. All right. Now you said the circuit breaker, you can go back 3 years, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's how many you can do an amended return that is for the last 3 years if you didn't plan before. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So I can do current year, and then I can go back to 3 years, and it's 3 years from the filing date. So I know I had somebody run into this. They were very disappointed. It's 3 years from when the tax return was previously due. Even though this year our returns aren't due until April 18th. If the 2019 return was due on April 15th, the deadline is April 15th this year to amend it. So don't go right up to the last day.
Okay, good advice there. I did want to confirm this is being recorded. Somebody asked because they missed the beginning of it. So the recording will be sent out to everybody. So no worries there. Here's another good question. Their tax preparation person passed away last year and they want to know where they can go. So they can go back to the same site. It doesn't have to be done by the same preparer, right?
Right. I mean, is this an AARP site that the person passed away?
Yes, it sounds like it. They went to a library site, so we can assume that they can get their taxes done there, even though their previous preparer isn't going to be.
Yes, absolutely. Now, if for some reason that site isn't operating, then go to the site locator to find a nearby site. If for some reason, after that person passed away, maybe if they're not running the site, but in general, that site would continue and they don't need to go to the same person every year.
Yep, perfect. This is a really good question. What is the amount someone can earn if they receive or are working and getting Social Security income? So what is the amount someone? This is like
I have to look it up in the manual.
Right,
can we take a note on that one?
Yeah. The person who asked that, if you could email us at ma@aarp.org, we can get you the answer to that. Okay.
Yeah.
ma@aarp.org.
Yeah. I mean, there's actually 2 variations of that question. So if you retire, if you collect Social Security before your full retirement age, there's a pretty low limit of what you can collect or what you can earn without it significantly impacting your Social Security. There's also, depending on your income level, your Social Security could be taxable. Either none of it's taxable, up to 50% of it could be taxable, or 85%. It's not taxed at 85%, but up to 85% could be included. So I think the person's talking about retiring before full retirement age. Is that correct?
Sounds like it. Yeah, but we'll get it. Let's clarify that when you ask the question via email. So thank you. And then we'll move on. We've got a good many more. If you do not qualify for medical deductions, you can still do charitable deductions, right?
Yeah, so when you itemize, you either, if it's worth it to itemize, and
Yep.
you can itemize however you have, whatever items you have, you would include. If your itemized deductions are greater than the standard deduction, then yes, you would itemize, even if medical doesn't count. So if your mortgage interest and your taxes are sufficient to make it worth your while to itemize, then you can certainly do that without including medical.
Great. This one's interesting. We put in a new boiler furnace in 2021, but TurboTax didn't know how to add it. Can they still write that off?
Yeah, so it's not writing off. There are energy credits.
Mhm.
And again, I would refer you to the AARP site to look at your specific situation. It's actually the energy credits up to, I don't know if it's 21 or 22 that they changed, but they've actually gotten much better. But for 2022, you have to check the specific rules of, does the boiler meet certain requirements? And again, it's a residential energy credit, and just ask the site, does this meet the requirements of the credit?
Mm-hmm. Good. And going back to the question about deductions, what is the standard deduction?
So for a single person, 65 or older, it's about 14,000. Married couple over 65 or older, it's going to be about 27 or 28,000. So those are roughly the numbers. Head of household is somewhere in the middle. So it really depends on your age, and if married filing jointly, both ages, and your filing status and your ages. And so it ranges from about 14,000 for a single person up to 27 or 28 for a married couple. So, this is what change that happened in 2017. The standard deduction used to be much smaller. Now that they've raised them, especially for married couples, the standard deduction is actually quite large, that we find, especially for married couples, very few people need to itemize, that the standard deduction is usually far more than their itemized deductions. For single people, we do find occasionally people, if they have a lot of medical expenses, if you have mortgage interest, property taxes, you can get up to the standard deduction amount. So it really depends, but it's in that range.
Very good. And I think maybe the last question, unless somebody puts a new one in, is, you've been talking about encouraging people to sign up to come to one of our sites. There's over 200 across Massachusetts. And this person here says that they've been paying to have their taxes done. They've actually been paying $350 and wants to know about doing their taxes on their own. But do you actually help people with that, helping them do their taxes on their own?
Yeah, so that's the assisted tax prep program.
But this person, let me interrupt, and this person doesn't have any income right now. So they wouldn't exceed the amount that you mentioned.
So then they would certainly have access to the free filing program. Yes. So they could use that. So you put in that request, someone will get assigned to you, and they'll give you access to the software, and they'll give you as much or as little help as you need. If you can mostly do it yourself, but you have a couple of questions, then that's fine. If you say, nope, I need you to walk me through every step of the way, they can certainly do that as well. But go into that website, put in the request, and that'll start the process rolling, where they'll get you access to the software. It's nothing that you have to download. You go onto a website and enter your information, and then you'll be able to, at the end of the process, electronically file it yourself.
Right. And there's no charge for any of this. That's somebody else's question. All of this is free services. It's part of the AARP Foundation mission to provide these services, training volunteers alongside the IRS. And there's thousands of volunteers across the United States that are part of the AARP Foundation program, just like Maria's leading a team. How many people are on your team, Maria?
I have about 80 people in my district. I have 14 sites in my district, and I have about 80 volunteers. And not all of them are tax preparers. So, and I will make a plug for, it's a very rewarding program. It's, it's a lot of work. It's not I do an hour here or there. But if you have the time and the inclination, and again, not everyone is a tax preparer volunteer. We use client facilitators who help organize the paperwork. If you have some technical background, we always have, need people who can set up the printers and the routers. So it's a very, very satisfying program to work as a volunteer. The volunteers are really a close-knit group. It's a nice group of people. The people we serve are very, very grateful for the help that we give, and it's just overall an extremely positive experience. And so happy to have people use our service. It's totally free, and if you're interested, we'd certainly encourage anyone who wants to volunteer with us. We always have a place for people.
Yeah, and people do it for many years as well. You're on your 6th year, and I've met people who did it for well over 20 years. And so,
Yes.
It's obviously very gratifying. I do have a couple more questions. This person wants to make sure we answer. Can they get assistance for both Connecticut and Massachusetts if they do their taxes, the assisted taxes?
That's a great question. Probably yes, but I would say let's send an email and we can get more information.
Okay, so definitely email us if we didn't get to the nitty-gritty details that you want us to. It's ma@aarp.org. ma@aarp.org. And then one more question came up. This may be too detailed, too personal, but I think you can perhaps give a global answer. My only income this year is alimony. I'm currently going through the process of filing for disability. Would this service be available to me? And if so, what are the locations in the Worcester area? So the service is available to her. What else do you want to say?
Yeah, so and nothing you've said has indicated you would be out of scope. So I wouldn't see any reason. Obviously, once we see all the paperwork you have, we would have to, the site would have to evaluate that it's in scope. And again, go to the site locator. You put in your zip code, and it tells you the sites that are, surrounding. I think you get to say 5 or 10 or 25 miles, distance. Most of the sites are senior centers. We do have some libraries, a few town halls, but the bulk of the sites are senior centers with libraries as a distant second.
Right, and off the top of my head, I know the Worcester Senior Center is actually a tax-aide site, so you can start there. I think we've gotten to everybody's questions here. And if we haven't, you can email us at ma@aarp.org. I will be sending an email with the recording and all of these sites and the email where you can email. You'll probably get that email tomorrow from us. And just a couple of reminders. In addition to this event, we are working to connect people with resources to pay their utility bills. And so we're going to do a teletown hall next Thursday, the 2nd. All focused at 1 p.m., all focused on energy assistance programs. So you can sign up to participate in that call. And I want to thank Maria for all the time you put into creating this presentation and supplying what I think was very helpful information to everybody. And we'll be sending out PDFs of the slides as well. And the AARP Tax-Aide website that we've talked about so much is really, really helpful. So thank you so much, Maria. Appreciate it. And you said you've got 80 people that you're leading. Thank you for your leadership. And I think that perhaps, hopefully, you've inspired a couple other people to come forward to participate as a volunteer. You can show your interest at AARP Tax-Aide website as well about volunteering. So you'll find a lot there. Thank you. And have a good rest of your day, Maria.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.